The conference room went silent the moment Mr. Daramola slammed the file on the table. I had been in that room 100 times before. Strategy meetings, quarterly reviews, end-of-year briefings. I knew every scratch on that long mahogany table, but nothing had ever felt like this. "Explain this," he said, pushing the file toward me. His voice was flat and controlled, like a man who had already made his decision before walking in. I opened it slowly. Bank statements, transfer records, internal memos, all with my name attached, amounts I had never touched, accounts I had never opened, signatures that looked exactly like mine but weren't. I looked up at the room. Every face was already set against me. My colleagues, people I had eaten lunch with, worked late with, laughed with over bad coffee, were nodding, slowly, like they had been briefed, like they had rehearsed this moment. "I didn't do this," I said. Nobody moved. Mr. Daramola raised one hand, and 2 security guards stepped through the door behind me. "Your access has been revoked," he said. "You'll be escorted out immediately." I looked around the room for one person who would speak up. I found Kelvin. He was staring at the table, not at me. His jaw was tight. His hands were flat on the surface in front of him. He never looked up. Not once. That silence hit me harder than any accusation. The walk through the Virex Solutions hallway was the longest of my life. The 2 security guards stayed close on either side, one step behind me at all times. Like I was dangerous. Like I was someone who needed to be contained. People stopped what they were doing. Colleagues I had known for 3 years looked up from their desks. Some stared openly. Others turned away too quickly, like they were ashamed to be caught watching. The receptionist kept her eyes on her screen. The junior analysts near the window pretended to be busy. Nobody said a word. My access card beeped one final time at the main entrance, and then the light on the scanner turned red. Done. I stepped outside into the afternoon sun, and the glass doors slid shut behind me. I stood on the pavement for a moment, not moving. My phone started buzzing immediately. Messages from numbers I barely recognized. People who had heard already. In a building that size, news moved faster than the elevators. Then the message I didn't expect. It was from Nadia. Short, clean, and cold. "I can't be associated with this. Please don't contact me." I read it twice. We had been together for 2 years. 2 years of dinners, plans, and shared mornings. And she ended it in 14 words. I took a taxi home because I didn't trust myself to drive. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the kind of shock that hasn't fully landed yet. The kind where your body knows something is wrong before your mind catches up. My landlord, Mr. Fashola, was standing at the entrance to my building. He didn't look happy. 3 months of rent. I had told him I was good for it, that the promotion was coming, and I would clear everything at once. He had been patient, but patience has a limit. "I need the arrears by the end of this week," he said, "or I start the removal process." I nodded and went inside. I opened my banking app, and my heart stopped. The account was frozen. Every account, savings, current, the one I used for daily spending. A message on the screen said the freeze was linked to an ongoing financial investigation. I called my bank immediately. The agent was polite, but firm. A formal request had been submitted. Until the investigation was resolved, I could not access my funds. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. Later, I found out the freeze request didn't come from any government authority. It came directly from Virex Solutions. They hadn't just fired me. They had made sure I couldn't survive outside those walls. I called Kelvin that same evening. He picked up on the third ring, which meant he had been watching the phone, deciding whether to answer. "I know you saw what happened," I said. "I need to talk to you." He sighed. "Look, I wasn't involved in any of it. I don't know what they found." "Kelvin." I kept my voice steady. "You were my best friend for 6 years. Just tell me the truth." He said nothing for a moment. Then, "I don't know anything. I'm sorry this happened to you." He ended the call. I stood in my kitchen replaying that conversation. Something was wrong. The denial came too fast, too rehearsed, like a response he had already prepared. Then I remembered. 3 weeks ago, I had shown Kelvin a photo on my phone, a watch I had been saving for. A Breitling Navitimer in black. I had told him it was my gift to myself after the promotion. He hadn't seemed interested, said it was too expensive. I opened his social media page. There was a photo from 2 days ago. He was at a rooftop event, smiling with a group of people. On his wrist was the watch, the exact model, the exact color. My promotion was the one thing standing between him and everything he had just taken. The anonymous message arrived the following morning. It came through an app one barely used, a secondary account I had set up years ago and almost forgotten. The message was short. Stop digging or you'll regret it. This isn't a warning you get twice. I almost dismissed it as a bluff. Then I saw the attachment. It was a photo of me, taken that same afternoon, outside my building, coming back from a nearby shop. I was carrying a bag, looking down at my phone. The angle was clear, close, and deliberate. Someone had been watching me all day. I locked my door and sat down. Whoever did this had planned it thoroughly. They framed me with documents precise enough to fool a full conference room. They froze my accounts before I could recover. And now they were monitoring my movement. This was not a corporate misunderstanding. This was calculated. I thought about calling the police, but I had no evidence that pointed to anyone specific. All the evidence on paper pointed to me. I would walk into a station and walk straight into a trap. I needed to think differently. I needed to find someone who had been where I was standing and had survived it. I closed the app and started searching. What I found next changed everything. If you're enjoying the ride so far, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support these stories and stay tuned for what's coming next. Her name was Tara Okoye. She had worked at Virex Solutions as a senior finance officer roughly 3 years before I joined. I had heard her name once or twice in passing, usually in conversations that stopped when someone noticed a message came through LinkedIn, short and professional on the surface, but with an urgency underneath that I could feel. I heard what happened to you at Virex. Can we talk? In person. We met at a coffee shop 2 days later, far from anything connected to the company. Tara was composed, careful, the kind of person who chose their words before they spoke them. She sat with her back to the wall and her eyes on the door the entire time. What happened to you happened to me, she said, except when they framed me, they made sure the charges were criminal. Did you fight it? I tried. She paused. They had more reach than I expected. By the time I gathered anything useful, the story had already moved on. She leaned forward slightly. You weren't the first person they did this to. I can show you the names. I can show you the pattern. She looked at me steadily. And I promise you, if we don't stop this together, you won't be the last. We met again the following evening, this time at Tara's apartment. She had printed documents organized by date and name, 3 separate cases, each one from the past 5 years. 3 employees who had been accused of financial misconduct at Virex Solutions, forced out and replaced within weeks. Look at the timeline, she said, spreading the pages across the table. Each termination happened within 60 days of a major company deal. The accusations followed the same structure: fabricated transactions, forged signatures, sudden evidence that appeared fully formed with no investigation trail behind it. And the replacements? I asked. She pointed to a column on the far right. Every single person who replaced a framed employee had a direct connection to Mr. Daramola. Former students, distant associates, old business partners. People he could control. People who owed him something. He's been doing this for years, I said slowly. He doesn't promote people he trusts, Tara said. He removes people who can't be controlled and installs people who can. I sat back and processed it. 3 employees, 3 setups, 3 replacements. And now me. Why me? I asked, why now? Tara slid one document forward. A contract, large, complex, still in negotiation. Because of this, she said quietly, keep reading. The contract was with a group of international infrastructure investors, a deal worth close to $40 million. I had heard about it at the company. snippets in corridors, hushed conversations in the elevator. It was the biggest deal Virex Solutions had ever attempted to close. Tara laid out what she had pieced together. The deal required an internal lead, someone with financial clearance, strategic oversight, and direct access to the company's offshore accounts. The position was sensitive, powerful. My promotion would have given me exactly that access. So, I wasn't just inconvenient, I said. No, Tara said. You were a threat. You would have been positioned to see everything, the real numbers, the real accounts, the parts of this company that don't appear in any official report. I thought about the documents I had seen in that conference room. The forged signatures, the fabricated transfers. They hadn't framed me because I had done something wrong. They had framed me because I was about to sit in a chair that would let me see the truth. And the access was transferred to someone else. I said, I already knew the answer before Tara nodded. The setup wasn't random. I had been cleared out of the way on purpose, with precision, with planning, with my best friend's full cooperation. I found out through a company update posted publicly, the kind of announcement that was meant to look routine. Kelvin had been named acting head of strategic partnerships. His photo was in the post. Professional, confident, perfectly composed. The caption called him a rising force in the company's next chapter. There were comments underneath from colleagues who had watched me be escorted out of the building just days earlier. They were congratulating him. I stared at the screen for a long time. 6 years. We had met in our first corporate job, worked our way up together, celebrated each other's wins. I had introduced him to people who mattered. I had vouched for him in rooms he couldn't access on his own. I had trusted him the way you trust someone who has been through hard things with you. And he had handed me over without hesitation. Then I saw something else, a tagged photo from a dinner 3 nights ago. A small group, an upscale restaurant, candlelight at the table. Kelvin was at the head of the table, smiling. Nadia was sitting right beside him. Her hand was resting on his arm. I set my phone down on the counter carefully. I didn't throw it. I didn't shout. I just sat very still and let the full picture come together around me. Tara sent me a link that same afternoon. It was a recording, internal, from the company's recent investor briefing. Someone had captured it on a phone, and it was never meant for outside eyes, but it had found its way out. Kelvin was presenting. He stood at the front of the room, polished and confident, walking investors through a strategic framework I recognized immediately. The structure, the language, the phasing, it was the same model I had developed 8 months ago and shared during an internal planning session. I had put weeks into building that framework. He had put his name on it. The investors were nodding. Asking questions, he answered smoothly. Someone clapped when he finished. Then Mr. Daramola stood and spoke. This is exactly the kind of leadership this company needs going forward, he said. Kelvin represents the future of Virex Solutions. The room applauded. I watched the whole recording twice. The second time, I paid attention to Kelvin's face when the applause came. He smiled. Calm, easy, and comfortable, like a man who had earned something, not like a man who had taken it. That was the moment I decided. I wasn't going to survive this quietly. I was going to dismantle every single piece of what they had built, carefully, completely, and without mercy. Tara brought it up carefully, the way people do when they know the idea they're about to present is complicated. There's a way to get real evidence, she said. Not just patterns and timelines. Actual files. Internal records. The kind that can't be argued away in a boardroom. How? She paused. I still have access to the back end of the company's document management system. It was never fully removed when they terminated me. I think they assumed I wouldn't know how to use it. I looked at her. That's illegal, Tara. Yes, she said simply. It is. Neither of us spoke for a moment. I thought about my frozen accounts, my landlord's deadline, Nadia's 14-word message. Kelvin presented my work to a room full of applauding investors. Mr. Daramola called him the future of the company. I thought about the anonymous photo sent to warn me off. I thought about the 3 people before me who had tried to fight this and lost everything. If we go in and get caught, I said, we lose any chance we have left. Yes, Tara said. And if we don't go in, I said, they walk away clean. And whoever comes after us gets the same treatment. Tara nodded slowly. I looked at the table. So, when do we do this? I asked. We went in on a Thursday night. Tara had everything prepared, a laptop, a secured connection, and an access route through a secondary administrative portal she had mapped out years ago. She worked quickly and quietly, moving through the system like someone who had spent years learning its layout from the inside. I watched the screen. Files began appearing almost immediately. Financial records spanning 4 years. Transfer logs showing funds moving between accounts, some offshore, some registered under names that appeared nowhere in the company's public documents. Fake vendor invoices approved and paid out repeatedly. Transactions labeled with legitimate project codes, but attached to zero actual work. Then she found the internal correspondence folder. Emails between Mr. Daramola and 2 senior board members. Detailed, specific, and deeply incriminating. Instructions on how to structure false accusations. Notes on timing, when to move, how to prepare the evidence which accounts to flag. And in every thread, in almost every document connected to the scheme, one name appeared alongside his plans. Mine. Not as a co-conspirator, as the designated fall guy in documents going back more than 7 months. They had been planning this before I even knew the promotion was on the table. Copy everything I said. Tara was already ahead of me. We were 40 minutes in when the alarm triggered. Not a loud one, just a soft series of rapid beeps from the corner of Tara's screen, signaling that an intrusion flag had been raised somewhere in the network. We need to go, she said, already moving. She began pulling the connection, closing sessions, wiping the access trail, working backwards through every step she had taken to get us in. But the second checkpoint was still locked. A final security layer that required a code we didn't have. I could feel the pressure in the room shift. How long do we have? I asked. Minutes, maybe less. I watched the lock screen. The cursor blinked steadily. The countdown in my head was getting louder. Then something happened that neither of us had done. The lock released on its own. The final checkpoint opened. No code entered, no bypass triggered on our end. It just opened, cleanly and silently, like someone had reached through the system and held a door for us. Tara grabbed the last of the files, and we closed everything and left. Outside, sitting in her car, we were both quiet for a moment. Did you unlock that final layer? I asked. She shook her head slowly. That wasn't me. We looked at each other in the dark. Someone else had been in that system, and they had chosen to help us escape. We spent the next day trying to trace the interference. Tara went back through the system access logs carefully, looking for any activity pattern that could tell us who had opened that final lock. It took hours. The trail was clean, deliberate, and short. Whoever had done it knew exactly how to move without leaving obvious footprints. But they hadn't been completely invisible. There was an account, a senior executive-level profile that had been active in the system during the exact window of our access. The login had lasted less than 3 minutes, just long enough to perform one quiet action. Tara cross-referenced the account credentials against the company directory. She went still. What is it? I asked. She turned the screen slowly toward me. The account belonged to one of the company's original co-founders, a board-level executive listed in the incorporation documents from the very beginning. The account username was registered under a personal name, Mrs. Adiz Daramola. I sat back. His wife, I said. Tara nodded. She has executive-level clearance. She helped set up the original company systems years ago. Her access was never removed. I thought carefully about what that meant. Someone on the inside had chosen to help us. Not randomly, not by accident. She had been watching everything unfold, and she had made a decision. She contacted us 48 hours later. The message came through an encrypted channel, anonymous on the surface but detailed enough inside to make clear she knew exactly who we were and what we had found. "I know what my husband has been doing," she wrote. "I have known for longer than I should have stayed silent. I want it stopped. We met in a neutral location, a quiet hotel lobby, midweek, in the middle of the afternoon. Mrs. Daramola arrived alone. She was composed in the way people are when they have carried something heavy for a long time and have finally decided to set it down. She confirmed everything: the false accusations, the fabricated evidence, the pattern of employees being set up and discarded. She had watched it unfold across years from the inside, carrying the weight of knowing what her silence had cost real people. "I tried to confront him twice," she said. "He told me to stay out of company matters. Why help us now?" Tara asked. Mrs. Daramola looked down at her hands for a moment. "Because I found documents with my signature on them. He had forged my name and used it." She looked up at us both. "He didn't just betray his employees. He involved me without my knowledge." She was done protecting him. Over the next 2 meetings, Mrs. Daramola laid out the full picture. Virex Solutions was not simply a company with corrupt leadership. It was a vehicle, carefully constructed over several years to move money through a network of fake employee scandals, fraudulent vendor accounts, and inflated project budgets. The method never changed. A capable employee would be positioned close to sensitive financial access. Before they could use that access, they would be accused of theft. Their accounts would be frozen, their reputation destroyed, and they would be removed before they could see anything they weren't supposed to see. The replacement would always be someone connected to Mr. Daramola, someone loyal, manageable, and willing to look away. The pattern had worked 4 times already. The 5th was supposed to be me. Kelvin wasn't the mastermind, Mrs. Daramola said. He was recruited, promised a share of the deal proceeds and a guaranteed position. He still made his choice. I said, "Yes," she said. "He wasn't innocent, but my husband gave him the playbook." She leaned forward. "The $40 million signing is scheduled for the end of next month. Once those funds clear through the company accounts, every trail disappears. Everyone walks away clean." She paused and looked at us both directly. "You have to act before then." We started building the plan that same night. The signing ceremony was the moment everything would be concentrated in one room: the investors, the board members, the media contacts, the executives. It was also the moment Mr. Daramola and Kelvin would be most exposed, most confident, and least expecting anything to disrupt them. That was exactly where we would strike. Tara mapped out the timeline. Mrs. Daramola would retrieve the final set of internal documents, the ones that connected the money trail directly to Mr. Daramola's personal offshore accounts. We would build a presentation clear enough that no one in that room could argue their way around it. The plan was tight, precise, and narrow enough that one mistake could unravel everything we had built. Then the margin got smaller. Tara called me 3 days into preparation. Her voice was calm but tightly controlled. "Someone inside the company is asking questions," she said. A flag was raised around unusual activity near our access session. Someone noticed the pattern. "Kelvin," I asked. "It would have to be someone with that level of clearance." She paused. "He's looking for a leak, and he's narrowing it down fast." I sat with that. We had been careful, but Kelvin was being careful too, and time was no longer comfortably on our side. 3 days later, Tara called again. This time her voice was lower, more controlled. The kind of tone she used when she needed me to stay calm while she delivered something difficult. "He followed me," she said. "I was leaving the hotel from our last meeting. A car tracked me for 6 blocks before I changed direction. I recognized the driver. He's one of Kelvin's regular associates. I sat down immediately. They had traced the access activity close enough to Tara that they were now tracking her in person. And if they suspected her, they were already connecting the line back to me." That evening, a message arrived from Kelvin. No greeting, no preamble, just one sentence. "I know it's you. Stop now and I won't make it worse." I read it 3 times. He thought the threat would be enough. That fear would do what it had always done to the others: make someone calculate their losses and step back. He still didn't understand who he was dealing with. I showed the message to Tara and Mrs. Daramola at our next meeting. It's actually useful that he sent that, Mrs. Daramola said, quietly. How? I asked. She looked at me steadily and slid a folder across the table. Because now we know exactly how little time remains. She tapped the folder. And we need to move faster than we planned. We worked through the final week without stopping. Every document was reviewed twice. Every transaction trail was cross-referenced against the bank records Mrs. Daramola had retrieved from a private account her husband didn't know she could access. Every email thread was dated, organized, and backed up in 3 separate secure locations. The evidence was dense and complex in places, but it was laid out clearly enough that anyone in that room with basic financial knowledge could follow the story it told from the first fabricated charge to the final offshore transfer. Tara built the presentation, clean, structured, and built to withstand challenges from people who would be motivated to find holes in it. Then, Mrs. Daramola arrived at our final preparation meeting carrying something we hadn't anticipated, a single folder. Inside was a signed memorandum dated 18 months earlier, outlining the exact structure of the entire operation, written in Mr. Daramola's own handwriting and signed by both him and 2 senior board members. It was the document that made everything else undeniable. Where did you find this? Tara asked quietly. I have kept it for 14 months, Mrs. Daramola said. I wasn't sure I would ever use it. I hoped things would change on their own. She looked at both of us. They didn't. She pushed the folder forward. Finish this. The signing ceremony was held at a large conference venue in the heart of the business district. I drove past it the night before. The banners were already up. Virex Solutions logos on tall display panels at the entrance. Printed programs stacked neatly on a welcome table visible through the glass doors. Everything was arranged and waiting for an event they expected to define the company's future. The following morning I dressed carefully, not to impress, just to be clear about who I was and what I was walking into. The guest list was significant. International investors who had traveled in specifically for this event. 3 members of the national business press with cameras and recording equipment. Senior executives from partner organizations. The full Virex board seated at the front. And at the center of all of it, Kelvin. I had seen the program. He was scheduled to deliver the lead presentation before the contracts were signed. His photograph was printed at the top of the page beneath his new title, Head of Strategic Partnerships. My title, my work, my ideas. Tara and I arrived separately 30 minutes before the ceremony was set to begin. Mrs. Daramola was already inside. She had sent one message early that morning. Everything is in position. I stood at the entrance for just a moment, then I walked in. Kelvin was already on stage when I entered the room. He was midway through his opening remarks, smooth, unhurried, working the room with the kind of confidence that belongs to someone who believes nothing can touch them. The investors were attentive. The board members were nodding. The press had their cameras raised. I walked through the side entrance and stood at the edge of the room. A few people noticed me immediately, then more. The murmur started small and moved outward like a ripple across still water. Someone near the front turned fully in their seat. A board member leaned toward the person beside him. Kelvin's voice slowed. He caught the change in the room's energy before he actually saw me. When he finally looked up and found my face, he stopped speaking. Complete silence. Security moved toward me from both sides of the room, 2 guards cutting through the crowd with purpose. Then a voice cut across the room, clear and completely calm. Stand down. It was Mrs. Daramola. She rose from her seat in the front row and turned to face the room. Her expression left no room for argument. The guard stopped. The room stared. Kelvin's hands tightened around the podium in front of him. Continue, Mrs. Daramola said. But she was looking at me, not him. I walked to the front of the room. Tara was already at the projection system. She connected the drive, and the screen behind the stage shifted. Kelvin's presentation disappeared and was replaced by the first document in our file. A transaction record, 47 fraudulent vendor payments, each one approved under a project code that had never existed, each one signed off by the same two executive names appearing again and again. These transactions were run through Virex Solutions over 38 months. I said, my voice was level. They are connected to offshore accounts registered under names that appear in no public company record. I paused and let the room absorb what was on screen. Then the next slide appeared. The fabricated evidence used against me, displayed side by side with the original documents, showing clearly where the alterations had been made, where the signatures had been forged, and when the files had been created. A full 6 months before I was ever accused. I watched faces change. The investors were no longer relaxed in their seats. Then Tara played the recording. Kelvin's voice, clear and unambiguous, discussing the plan to remove me and secure his position in the deal. He straightened up. That's been edited. Then his own voice played again, this time with the surrounding context intact. The room went absolutely quiet. Mr. Daramola stood up. He looked around the room like a man searching for an exit that had already been sealed. His face moved through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, sharp calculation, and then something that had collapsed into barely controlled fury. This is completely fabricated, he said, his voice too loud for the room. This woman has a personal vendetta. This man was terminated for theft. None of what you're seeing is. The doors at the back of the room opened. 4 officers from the Financial Crimes Unit entered. Behind them, 2 investigators carrying sealed document cases. The room erupted. Investors pushed back their chairs and rose. Cameras swung toward the entrance. Board members looked at one another with the specific panic of people who suddenly realize they are in entirely the wrong place. Mr. Daramola stopped speaking. Kelvin stepped back from the podium and looked toward the side exit. He moved quickly, cutting past the edge of the stage, ducking past a camera crew, reaching the side door in seconds. He pushed it open and stopped. Nadia was standing on the other side. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped aside and let the officer standing directly behind her come through. I gave them everything, she said to Kelvin quietly. I'm not going down for this. The arrests took less than 20 minutes. Mr. Daramola was escorted out through the main entrance, past the company banners, past the printed programs, past the welcome table with its neat stack of event brochures. 2 officers on either side. A room full of cameras capturing every step. Kelvin was taken at the side entrance. He didn't speak as they read him his rights. He just stared at the floor. By that evening, the story was everywhere. Not the version told about me, the one that had destroyed my reputation in hours. This version was different. It had documents attached. It had recordings. It had names, dates, account numbers, and a signed memorandum in a man's own handwriting. It was the kind of story that spreads because people need to believe the truth can actually win. My name appeared in every headline by the following morning. Not as the accused, as the one who had uncovered it all. Calls and messages came from people I had almost forgotten. Apologies from colleagues who had sat in that conference room and said nothing. Messages from journalists, industry contacts, and people I had never met. Then a formal letter arrived from the Virex board. They wanted to meet. They offered me my position back with a restructured title, full ownership of the Strategic Partnership Division, and terms that gave me more authority than I had ever been promised. I walked back into the Virex Solutions building on a Tuesday morning. The same lobby, the same elevator, the same long hallway that led to the main conference room. I remembered walking out of it, escorted, humiliated, with an entire floor watching and no one willing to speak. The board was seated when I entered, 5 of them, arranged around the familiar mahogany table in carefully pressed suits, wearing expressions balanced somewhere between gratitude and quiet discomfort. They presented their offer in full. The position, the title, equity in the restructured company, more authority than anything they had dangled before me. I let them finish. Then I sat quietly for a moment, not because I needed to think, but because I wanted the silence to settle properly in the room. I appreciate what you're offering, I said. and I understand exactly why you're offering it. I placed a single document on the table, a business registration certificate. I started my own firm 2 weeks ago. I said, 3 of your largest investors have already committed to bringing their accounts across. 2 more are in conversation as we speak. I stood up and picked up my bag. What happened in this room tried to end me, but it also showed me exactly what I was capable of when no one was above me holding the ceiling down. I looked at each of them one final time. I didn't destroy you. I paused at the door. You did that to yourselves. I walked out. This time, no one escorted me. This time, I didn't look back. If you haven't subscribed already, please do, and turn on those notifications so you can be part of our community. I've got some incredible stories lined up that you won't want to miss. Until next time, stay safe.